get right back to it. The FBI made a big announcement today. The investigation into the San Bernardino shooting is being called a terror investigation. The T word, terror, something President Obama can't seem to utter. Even after the FBI has called it terror, he's arguing with it. Here to discuss is legal analyst and conservative columnist Gayle Trotter. Gayle, welcome back to America Trends. Good to have you.
Great to be with you, Dr. Gina.
It was announced, Gayle, that the San Bernardino shooting is being investigated as an act of terror. But what does that mean? How does that change an investigation? And does that change, what does that change mean in terms of what happens to someone who might be arrested and charged as being part of the attack or knowing about it ahead of time?
Yes, understanding how it works, you look at the jurisdiction that an agency or a governmental bureau has over the investigation of a crime and the prosecution of a crime. So before it was an act of terror, the local government, the San Bernardino County and the state government would have control over the investigation with the help of the FBI if they wanted the FBI to help. Now that it's been seen that it's an act of terror, the jurisdiction moves over to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and it is investigated as a federal crime. And then once they find somebody to prosecute, if they look into any associations that the two suspects who were killed at the scene, any associations that they have to determine if it is more than just those two individual actors acting alone, then it would be part of a federal investigation, and the jurisdiction for the prosecution would be at the federal level. So a U.S. attorney would take over the investigation and the prosecution once the FBI concluded its investigation.
All right, in other trending news today, another Chicago police shooting is trending. Mayor Rahm Emanuel says the city will release the dash cam video showing the fatal shooting of Ronald Johnson by Chicago detective George Hernandez. Who's Rahm Emanuel going to fire now, Gayle?
It's getting pretty thin among the ranks in Chicago.
God forbid someone actually say the buck stops here and take the blame, right?
No, it's easier to push it onto your subordinates.
Right.
Instead of having leadership at the very highest level, it's much easier to blame those who can't speak up as well for themselves. And we know that, unfortunately, Chicago has very strict gun laws, and because of that, it is one of the most dangerous places in terms of gun violence. You look back to the holiday weekend of July 4th, there were 82 people shot during that four-day holiday weekend of July 4th. 15 of them were fatally shot. And we see this happening over and over again in this city. So you have a police department that is trying to maintain some sort of order, and then you have these videos that are released that inflame the population. Because as you know, videos can be somewhat misleading. They don't give the entire story. And in that situation, sometimes people can get an impression of circumstances that are not entirely accurate. So the police are in a no-win situation. They have the task of trying to keep all of the citizens of Chicago safe, but then they have activists in the city of Chicago actively working against their ability to try and keep the citizens safe. So it's a no-win situation for the police. And unfortunately, Rahm Emanuel is not being a good leader and showing a path forward for the city of Chicago.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Chicago police shooting of Laquan McDonald also trending again today after city officials released surveillance video from the nearby Burger King from the night of the shooting. But the only video they found was video of the officer entering the restaurant and deleting the videos on their surveillance system. This is about as corrupt as it gets, and it is no wonder sometimes by the actions of this police officer why people get so upset about this, even though you and I know that 99% of our first responders are doing their jobs. Guys like this give them all a bad name.
Yes, they are. Most police officers are putting their lives on the line every single day when they walk out of their homes and they put on the badge, and they try to protect all of us. And yet when you have an officer acting like this, I mean, obviously he must be breaking some laws, either obstruction of justice, tampering with the evidence. And I hope that the local prosecutors in Chicago definitely make sure that he is prosecuted for what obviously is some attempt to change the evidence and to influence the investigation of this case. And as you say, it gives all police officers a harder time in doing their duty to keep all citizens, not only in Chicago, but in the whole country, because it affects the reputation, for better or worse, of all police officers.
Boston Police Department trending today, too. They arrested a man who left a suitcase near a Homeland Security vehicle. It was just a hoax, but this guy, he's in some big trouble, and he should be, shouldn't he, Gayle?
Absolutely. I mean, you think particularly in relation to Boston, what they had to go through with the Boston Marathon bombing and the very young child, the 8-year-old boy who was killed by the Tsarnaev brothers deciding to leave bombs at the end of the Boston Marathon. This is serious stuff. There is no excuse for anything that resembles any kind of hoax or any type of political statement by this, or even, it's been alleged that maybe the person who did it had some form of mental illness. But think about the police resources that it tied up, where they were unable to respond to other things that were going on in the community. And more importantly, the traumatic type of response that most people in Boston must have had to knowing that not only was this done, but that it's a possibility that can happen every day. So this should be vigorously investigated and prosecuted as well.
Well, it seems to me like the little clock guy should be vigorously prosecuted as well. But it seems like instead he's getting scholarships and lawsuit money and moved to Qatar. So anyway, that's a different topic. The dog duct tape story trending again today, Gayle. The woman who posted the picture on Facebook was found guilty of animal abuse. This woman wasn't too smart to do this in the first place. We don't know if she did it because the dog barked or what, but people were very upset about this. What do you make of all of this?
Well, we shouldn't convict people for what they put on Facebook. And I think that this is a perfect example of where things can go on Facebook. It might be taken out of context, but you have to take it before a court of law and let a jury and the judge decide based on the facts and evidence. And as you know, under our constitutional system, the prosecution has to prove that the person has committed the crime that they're charged in, and they have the burden to prove that all of the elements of the crime have been met. And in this case, that seems like what's been done. And they felt like some people felt like she should have been thrown into prison for a long time because of the cruelty that they saw exhibited in these pictures that were posted on Facebook. But I think this is a perfect example where the court could weigh the evidence and decide based on the full circumstances and facts presented before the court what was a fair and appropriate resolution of this case and punishment.
Okay, real quick, I want to get to this question with you because Alpha Phi is a sorority that actually was on my campus as well in my undergrad. They're trending today. They announced that they do not support the Safe Campus Act, which is this proposed law, and I want you to tell us very quickly why it is that you think they don't support it.
The Safe Campus Act is an attempt to kind of stop the railroading that a lot of people who have been accused on college campuses of committing sexual assaults have seen over the last couple years. And so they're opposing it, I think, because they want to make sure that these accusations can be leveled against members of their community that they suspect of sexual abuse and not have to go through the civil criminal justice.
Got it. Got it.
System.
Thanks for being with us, Gayle. We're all out of time. Stay tuned for more America Trends right after this.